I am showing you this because this is going to the storage, and it has been much abused, sadly, because I think at some point I fell out of love with it because the cover here, I've had this for many, many years, and so my attitude to things have evolved and changed and shifted. But the tacky, plasticky feeling of this cover really put me off. It felt cheap, and I just, it became the opposite of a favorite. It's just sat there for a really, really long time, and then I went away from New Zealand as this one sit quietly at home with my mom before it was packed up to storage, and then returned to me recently in a box. And this was on its way. The set was on its way back to storage, and then I thought, well, maybe I should show this to you guys before I. So it looks like leather, but it's not. It really feels like plastic. You can see the weaving of some kind of a cloth underneath it, and on top of that is what looks like lacquer, but I believe it's more plastic than lacquer. I honestly don't know. If any of you know anything about this, do let me know. This material and this kind of aesthetic from the early 20th century, please feel free to post down below. And so as in customary or tradition, the top is gilded. That is to protect from the sun, and I think it's to protect from dust as well. I'm not sure, but definitely to protect that part, the pages, because that is the one that is most exposed. If you put books like that on a shelf, the bottom is protected by the fact that it's sitting on a surface, and then the front here is usually against the back of the shelf, so that's protected. So that left the top of the books exposed to the element, and therefore you often find the top edges of the pages are covered with either metallic gilding or solid color, solid colors. Some of the Folio Society books and a lot of books from the mid 1900s often have solid colors just at the top there. I'll show you some of my Folio Society books which has like solid blue and solid red on top of it. They're quite nice. So these are made to look as if this is made of something else, but it is basically feels like plastic on my skin to the touch. And the bottom looks like it's hand cut, and I believe they are potentially hand cut because some of these pages have not been cut properly, so that two pages are attached to each other, and so it's not practical to read. Well, it's almost impossible to read, and I'm not going to separate them. So like two pages like this is still attached at the edges, which I thought was interesting. I filmed that just now, but the camera wasn't rolling, so I've spent about 10-15 minutes talking to this camera and nothing was recorded. So some of the pages are still attached together at the edges here, and so once you cut them, it resulted in this sort of uneven hand cut look there on the edges, which is rather attractive. So there's a lot of foxing and there's a lot of yellowing, so I suppose the pages aren't acid free. The front of it is a paste down let me see, binding method, which isn't ideal, it's not the strongest. So basically this end paper is simply glued on to the first page of the book, connecting it to the cover like so. And this method of paste down method is often very, very delicate, very weak around the seams there, and you can begin to see it breaking there at the corner there. So the illustration is consistent with the early 1900s, so very Art Nouveau, very Art Deco. It's late Art Nouveau and early Art Deco there. The aesthetics quite consistent, and for each of the front the first illustration at the front, there is a sheet of thin tissue paper that covers it. In better produced books, the sheet of paper like so is on top of every illustration throughout the books. And often the illustration are plates, so they are printed separately in colors and then pasted down one by one. I'll show you a book with illustration by Arthur Rackham and by Edmund Dulac that is that way soon. So that is volume 1. Let's take a look at, can't remember which volume, the ones with the pages still, whoa, okay. I am crouching on the floor and it's very awkward and my lower back is killing me, so I'm going to try and do this quick. I won't be alone in the house for long either, so just want to find, there it is. Look at that. So that is still uncut, the page. I would assume that somebody had to go through and cut this. So there's a few like this, and I'm not going to cut it because it's part of the reason why I collected, why I collect this to begin with. There it is, another one. So I just thought that was quite unique there. It's quite interesting there. Yeah. So yeah, so I am going to leave you there for the moment. Please keep an eye out on my introduction video on the 1001 Nights, Arabian Nights series of books and translations. It's not really the book, it's the translation that is fascinating. It is about as fascinating as the history of translations of the Bible. In it you can see a whole raft of human history and human cultural history. And how culture and stories, how stories help culture evolved. And so, yeah, so that is the 1001 Nights. So hopefully this time, this is actually recording. Have we taken a look at the publication? I've done this so many times that I honestly can't remember, sorry guys. So if I haven't, let's quickly have a look at this. I won't have time to edit, unfortunately, with my new job and with, there it is. So copyright 1929, the new edition with revisions copyright 1930. I'm not quite sure if this was printed 1930, but definitely the text has been copyrighted 1930. So this would have been produced in the 1930s, and the aesthetic reflects that. Printed in the United States, Dingwall Rock Limited, New York, I believe. Rendered from the literal and complete versions of Dr. J.C. Mardrus and collated with other sources by Mardrus. And the drawings and illustration is by Roderick McCrae. So any of you know any thing or have any further information about this particular publication, this particular publisher, this particular edition, this particular aesthetic, which I thought is quite interesting. As you can see, you can hear that's not leather. Please feel free to comment down below and let us know, share with us. So thank you again for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.